Our next speaker is Bob Mumgaard from Commonwealth Fusion Systems, looking at fusion from the other point of view, the squeezing in magnetic bottles rather than the zapping with megajoules, but it's all good stuff. And Bob, have you got any amazing news to share with us? Or have you just done something quite as extraordinary as that?
No, I was told I wasn't supposed to break news here. So,
oh well, I'm at liberty to say you're allowed to if you wish.
no, we're where we're at is we're building a facility outside of Boston that is called the Spark facility. It's based on tokamak, magnetic confinement, and that's just over 60% complete. It's something that every day they add more of the parts to, and when the predictions are that it'll get more power out than in, somewhere around gain of 10. Hope to turn it on here in 26 and start to really ramp it in 27. So we're heads down delivering that. We announced last year that in December that the first commercial plant, which we'll call ARC, Sparks before ARCs, that will build in Virginia.
Do these acronyms actually?
They used to, but it's sort of been all combined together.
I'm sure advanced was part of it.
Advanced is, whenever you see an A in fusion, you can be pretty clear it's advanced.
Unless it's a neutronic. Yeah. So when you say you're well on the way, how many of the actual, the core of any tokamak type design, I assume, is the magnets. How far are you along with the magnets?
So there's lots of magnets. We actually build the magnets in-house. The magnets are one of the key things about fusion is you have all these technologies that feed it. And it's sort of an apex predator of technology. It needs a pretty big ecosystem of technology to work. And in our case, the magnets are a key component, and we've been able to take magnetic technology, double the magnetic field from what was available just a few years ago, and to transfer that into production. So we actually build these with a factory that makes these magnets. There's the toroidal field, which is the main one. About 80% of all the plates of that have been made. We'll finish that this summer. And then of the 18 coils, they're working on the 5th coil right now.
Mm-hmm. And someone told me, the magnets work by using high temperature superconductor tape, yes? Mm-hmm. Someone told me that that ARC actually required 20,000 kilometers of tape?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like when I remember the first meter, so the way you build a magnet is it's like grade school, like you have a wire, and you wrap it around a nail, and you put it like on a battery. Just imagine that, but instead of an amp, it's 50,000 amps, so much bigger. And the wire's made out of stuff that won the Nobel Prize. Mm-hmm. So a little different, but that material, that superconductor, I remember the first meter I ever saw that. It was 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And it was took us, years to get 10 meters of it. And now it's tens of thousands of kilometers of it. And so that's an industry that we've actually, as CFS, been mostly responsible for scaling that by about a factor of 40 just in the last couple of years. Most of that material is actually now, for Spark, is actually in warehouses in magnets.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with the metric system, 20,000 is by definition the distance from one pole to the other. So that's one whole line of latitude.
Well, I'm glad we didn't use it that way.
Oh well, put it around the other side, and you could really get some. So where does the tape come from? You talked about being an apex predator. Is that so? That's not something that you're doing in house.
No, we've developed a supply chain for that, a global supply chain. There's some European and Japan are big suppliers. It's sort of a thin film process. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the themes in fusion is. You have some things that are super fusion specific, like tritium, right? You have some things that are fusions driving forward that could be used for other applications, the superconductor, the magnets. Then you have other things that the rest of the world drove forward that fusion is sort of fusionifying. So refrigerators that are really cold and they're colder than LNG, and you sort of take a refrigerator and make it colder. These are industrial refrigerators, but that sort of global supply chain footprint it in and of itself is an interesting development that's happened just over the last 5 years. And for us, 30 different countries that supply Spark in that supply chain.
Well, isn't that kind of peculiarly worrying for you at the moment with the deglobalization process, with tariffs, it seems to me a difficult time to be it's a difficult time to be maintaining a supply chain, let alone setting one up.
Yes, it does worry me, but fortunately for Spark, at least, a lot of the stuff is already in Massachusetts. So, we're at the end of buying on Spark, and
Right.
we're in the assembly on Spark. And so the timing's okay for us for the current dislocation. There's still stuff that I'm very annoyed to have to pay tariffs for. I'd rather pay people to make Fusion go forward than tariffs. But but going forward, I think this is part of the race part of this, which is like, how is the Fusion market going to evolve? Like, what's the footprint going to be for the supply chain? What's the footprint going to be for the regulations? What's the footprint going to be for the integrators and what markets they can sell in? All that still has to be determined. And of course, if you were to go back and do this 10 years ago, science wouldn't have been there. But like, if you were, you would have been in a very globalization framework, and now you might be in more of a bifurcation framework.
And one of the things we've talked about on previous occasions is the fact that you're not just trying to build a reactor, you're trying to build an industry.
Yeah, because we can in Fusion you can get like super focused on the science, right? And the science, it's awesome, it's cool. I have a PhD plasma physics from MIT because I think the science is beautiful, but the science doesn't actually power the lights, right? Like, to power the lights, you actually need plants that run every single day, that have people in them that staff them, that have finance behind them that got them built. You need more than one plant. If you only build one fusion power plant, we have utterly failed, right? Like, you need thousands. There's thousands of power plants. And in order to have that, you just work backwards, and you can very clearly see you're going to need a supply chain, you're going to need public acceptance, you're going to need regulation, you're going to need to be able to build companies that can do this. Like, how you actually build a fusion company is in and of itself an interesting endeavor. You're going to need to be able to finance it. Like, it's a much bigger thing than just the technology. And if you were to look at my daily agenda, CFS is the largest of the fusion companies. The science part of my daily agenda is pretty small. It's all the other stuff that has to happen that without which you will not have a fusion industry.
So in the mature, at least adolescent industry that we might anticipate, what does CFS do? Do you build tokamaks to put into buildings that other people create? Do you license technology? What do you do?
Yeah, so before I talk about what CFS does, if you sit down and you think about what is a fusion power plant, right? Fusion is a reaction. It's a reaction. It's not a machine, right? It's not a plant. It's a reaction. It's a reaction that takes hardcore science. You just heard from Kim. That is a no-nonsense, at the cutting edge of what humans can actually do with big, supercomputer simulations and advanced measurements to make that reaction occur. That reaction requires conditions that are extreme, like the conditions inside stars, where that reaction takes place most of the time. And those conditions require a machine that you build. So you need to design and build a machine that can reliably make those conditions. That machine is a ton of IP. You manufacture it. It has different stellarators, tokamaks, IFE, lots of different versions. They all have to do the same basic thing and make the right conditions. And then that machine, if it gets those reactions going, makes a bunch of energy. Heat comes out of that machine. And that machine then lives in a plant that has to have all the accoutrements that make that machine work. Usually the machine has no moving parts. All the moving parts are in the plant. And then take the energy and convert it to electricity. That plant oftentimes is a building. It needs to be on a site. It has neighbors. It has regulations. It has all the pieces that go to finance it. So that, once you're at that scale though, that's a power plant. The world knows how to do power plants. Mm-hmm. And so you go from the super esoteric to actually pretty mundane in the industry. And how you build a company to cut through that, you can do it multiple different ways. CFS, we are very vertical. We do the whole thing end to end because we look and we see that A, there's a lot of value in integration, but B, you can actually make trades across that whole chain. And then probably most importantly, you can't really, there's no one else that's really mature enough to hand it off to you right now.
Right.
In the future, we'd love to hand off pieces of that. But right now, it's okay, we have to drive the whole thing. Long term, we think we build the machines, manufacture them, and then help do the development of the sites and form the role of the integrator.
So is the technology more like traditional fission nuclear, or is it more like combined cycle gas plants?
We think it's more like combined cycle. And this is something that we've learned, Not at CFS. So CFS is like 1,300 people right now. And there's entire divisions that at the time, like when we laid it out, we didn't think we needed. But we've learned that the technology itself, like the product tells you what it needs. It tells you that like, oh, you need to actually be really, really tightly integrated in this machine. And so that looks more and more like a gas turbine and less like a pile of hot rocks. And that means that like you have people that are super, super good at systems engineering, that are really, really good at fine trades between various components that you couldn't outsource. And so I think in that way, the industry might end up looking like combined cycle, but without, say, fuel.
Right. Okay. I'm going to open it up to questions, not from the center block, because you just got to. And, oh, yes, over there. Yes, lady in the front row. Someone is running towards you. No, front row, here, here. There we go.
Up.
Warmer, warmer, hot.
Thank you. Got there in the end. Hi, I'm Isabel Devon. I'm at the Carbon Trust. I'm just going to ask a question, and it's more provocative than anything. But
Well, I like that.
why? I mean, this is a technology that hasn't proven effective in commercialization for quite some time, and we have quite a lot of deployment of renewable energy all around. Why should governments and policymakers focus on making the environment right for fusion when perhaps they could invest elsewhere?
Yeah, so good question. First, like some numbers. So the energy market is so big, right? It's like one out of every $12. So like, you know, the scale of that market means that it's not a zero-sum game. So you're not like looking and saying like, should I do solar and wind versus something else? You're gonna need it all. The second is the attributes of fusion are so different from renewables that you know, it's very power dense, right? It's something that you manufacture in a factory that is a pretty high value activity. It's not a commodity like a solar panel. So like there's a theory that the West could actually make a decent wage building fusion machines in a way that you couldn't do if you just made batteries. So there's some attributes that relate to that. The sovereignty of it, you like can have once you have the machine, you have it forever. And also you have just some limitations of the intermittency of solar and wind and the land use. Like we have Singapore as one of our investors. Like you cover Singapore with solar panels and you get 7% of Singapore's energy use. Like you just can't, the math does not math, right? And so fusion offers this opportunity to do those things in a new way, and in a way that it could be deeply, deeply dislocating to the existing energy system. Because with fusion, you have designs out there that could get to very low cost. I'm not saying it's going to be the first ones, but like at the level of civilization changing costs, at a sovereignty and technology complexity that could build giant moats, like it looks like energy as a tech thing. That is very different than all the existing energy sources. And so when you think about what governments solve for, it fits some niches, bigger than niches.
I'm going to bring you back out of the niches to the big, because I've realized that we didn't actually deliver on what your talk is titled as. Why not 30 years? Why 3 years, not 30 years now? Why, having heard 30 years forever, you're talking about having this gain by 2028?
Well, first, there's just a general fallacy of people that think that something is a long way away, therefore it always will be a long way away. Like, there was literally people that are like, yeah, flight will never happen, like when the Wright brothers were in Kitty Hawk flying. So, like, that piece of evidence in and of itself is not a useful piece of evidence of, like, it's always been a long way away, therefore always will be. What it hides is a huge amount of progress that's happened scientifically. You know, we had Kim up here talking about ignition on NIF. Like, that is one example of many where these concepts of actually creating the right conditions have been demonstrated in not in computers, but in real life. Jet down the street here, significant energy production at modest gain. So we have the science. You also have a bunch of different technologies that are flooding the zone, right? You have the magnets, you have simulation, you have advanced materials, you have things like people making foams for targets. You got a bunch of different technologies that were sort of warehoused outside of fusion that people developed independently that are now suddenly being put into this mix At the same time, you're putting a bunch of different people in the mix. So companies that are hiring from people that built rockets, that are build all sorts of, we have people from biotech at CFS. Companies in the mix and new organizations in the mix. Like there's something that's out of that soup. Like something is going to come out of that. We think we're going to be that, but that's a very, very intriguing thing. And I'm a history of technology person. I was a fellow at MIT on that. And it looks like these other technologies that became giant industries, it looks like their pattern. There's some pattern matching here. Like early biotech, for instance, is actually the thing I always go to. But it's super exciting.
Great. I'm going to do two very quick questions. One is, what will be the yield in 2028, 29?
For Spark, 2029, it will probably be somewhere in the 15 megajoule range on Spark.
So in Q, that's
Q's a few, but Spark's should be good up to about a gigajoule.
right.
So we're talking about orders of magnitude here of if you start to plot the yield in fusion, it has this potential in the next 5 years to go way.
And how many other technologies will be doing more or less that well within 5 years of you?
Super hard to guess. Because
You don't even need to name them. You just need to say 2, 5, 1, none.
1 to 2.
1 to 2.
Maybe 2 to 3. Or if you're an optimist, 2 to 3.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Bob.
All right, thanks.
Very nice seeing you again.